I'm Emily Wilson. We're at Loarfest East, and I have here this January 9th, 1923 Loar, and he has the classic Loar. This is Billy Thibodeau, and we have Mike Schroeder over here, and we have Tom Isenhour, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Loars. How do we know these are all real?
Well, that's a good question. Since the 60s, there's been a lot of fake Loars because when bluegrass became, the FI became the bluegrass mandolin to have, Gibson was not making the best F5 at the time well, they were making none in 1939 45 when you consider Scruggs came into the bluegrass picture. I believe bluegrass started 39. Most people argue over the 2 dates. 1945, when Scruggs comes into the picture in late December, they said that's when the term bluegrass evolved. And Monroe had his Lloyd Loar. He bought it in January of 1945 at a barbershop in Miami, Florida, when he was on tour down there, and was walking the streets on a day off and saw it in a barbershop and said, "Hey, that's a Gibson mandolin," and went in and played it. And at the time, Monroe was playing a Gibson F7. The F7 style is a shorter version on the neck, joins the body at the 12th fret, which made it more difficult to do a B chord. So Monroe would come in and play a F5 Loar for the first time and hit a B chord. And he still had all this space down here to hit the high notes like. It made it a lot easier, not only to mention the sound was different, and Monroe felt like he found the mandolin he was looking for at that time and pretty much benched the F7, and that became his mandolin. So while we're here today at Loarfest East, it's because of Bill Monroe chose the Gibson F5 and specifically the Lloyd Loar model. Now what Emily has here is not only just a Lloyd Loar Gibson F5 signed by Lloyd Loar, but signed on the same day as July 9th, which is Monroe's date, known as the Monroe batch. And she has the second part of the batch. There was the first batch, which matched the Gibson specs of the binding being white, white, black, white on the binding. And then there's no binding on the side, it's just white. This batch is reversed, and they call it the reverse binding or side binding. Monroe just happened to have found that particular batch when he found it in the barbershop. He didn't know the difference. He just knew it was a Gibson F5 mandolin that he liked. And the strange story of Monroe and the F5 is he knew what an F5 was. His brother Charlie had bought a brand new 1942 model when he had his bluegrass partners, and Lester Flatt was his mandolin player. And Lester Flatt played an F5 before Bill Monroe. Not many people realize that, but here's Lester Flatt playing a Gibson F5 in his brother's band, and then he hires Lester Flatt to play guitar and sing lead when he was playing mandolin, singing tenor with his brother. So he knew about a Gibson F5, but the 40s models were not quite like these Lloyd Loar models. There's a big difference in the sound and the way they play. So Bill preferred his F7 even after playing an F5. But when he found a Lloyd Loar, he knew there was a big difference, and he latched onto it. And of course, I guess Lester never went back to playing mandolin after that. I don't know of him playing mandolin. But these reverse binding is a small batch in July 9th. The only thing that means special July 9th to me is just one of the dates that Loar signed throughout from 1922 to 1924. Whenever he was in the office to sign a batch of mandolins, it just happened to be that date. Sometimes he would sign as many as 20 in one day, and sometimes it may be one or two. As fast as the 6 craftsmen could build them, he would sign them. Loar's label is known as the final approval of a Lloyd Loar mandolin, and that's why it's called a Loar mandolin. The fern I'm holding has no Lloyd Loar label, so we just simply call it a fern.
What year is that fern?
This would be a late 20s, late 28. And they're just as good as a Loar. They're great mandolins.
Yeah.
Bobby Osborne has one. This is
I
one.
played that this week.
Yeah, Bobby Osborne. This is
Yeah,
one number
we had
away
some
from
bonding
Bobby
time.
Osborne. We matched it up with the same tree in the wood. We matched this mandolin, the same tree as Monroe's. Ricky Skaggs has one like it. Darrell Wolf had one like it. This one, and then the new, what we call the Grease.
Yeah, the one that just
Greek,
popped up
the Greek,
that CJ has.
the CJ Greek Loar that he went to Greece to pick up also has the same pattern of the tree. So you could probably get 7 F5s out of one tree, out of the Michigan maple. So that's probably missing 1 or 2. But it's interesting that these mandolins came out of that batch. So Monroe latched on to that, but as a mandolin player, we didn't know his was a July 9th. We didn't really know it was a Lloyd Loar. We knew it was a Gibson F5. And people sought him out. Bobby Osborne sought out a fern because it was a Gibson F5. Others would sought out the 30s models. You know, Sam Bush ended up with a 37. Dave Apollon had all the years. So the Gibson F5 is what it's all about, a pre-war Gibson F5. The Lloyd Loar would be the cream for the Gibson pre-war F5s. What else we need on that?
Let's see.
Talk a little bit about Loarfest. How did that come about?
Okay,
What
Loarfest
happens?
is kind of, it merged with Banjothon, which is, I think they said been going on 15 or more years, they announced today. I was involved in it way back. I've been invited to it way back. I'm also a part-time banjo player, banjo enthusiast. It used to be held in Maryville by Mr. Mathis, who put it together as a small gathering. Then they moved it to a club room somewhere at a community center. Then it kept growing by invitation only. We moved here. I guess it's about the 3rd time here. I think so. Does that sound right? You guys, you have been coming.
My first time.
This is my first time.
Okay,
You sent me a
My
note.
second, I came here in
2020.
2020.
Yeah. I guess I was here maybe 2 times before that. One time I couldn't get here. But this is a great place to have it, and it's just a gathering with Banjothon, and we decided. But slowly, mandolin players like Herschel Sizemore would bring his collection and display it on the table. And there's mandolin players who also play banjo, so they're here and said, "Well, I can now bring my mandolin to display with the banjos," and it evolved into Loarfest, which Darrell Wolf, who was instrumental in the F5 Journal magazine, decided, let's merge them together, and they welcomed us into the club, the private club of Banjothon. And Darrell didn't make it this year. He had some sickness at home and couldn't make it. And that's how it kind of evolved into what we call Loarfest East. Now, there's been other Loarfest. I'm wearing a t-shirt from Loarfest West, which was in Bakersfield, California in 2006. That was put on in conjunction with Gibson Company, who helped sponsor it. There's been IBMA Loarfest, where they would have a certain room set aside for the Lloyd Loar owners to get together. And then we would get together as a group, as a private group, and then we would allow the public to come in to see things. There was one in Nashville, Owensboro,
Louisville.
two in Louisville. So it's been going now. A Loarfest can happen in someone's house. 4 or more Loars makes it a fest. We've got a mini fest right here.
Yeah.
Right here. And I've been to many fests.
So Loarfest 419.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was, how many would we say, 45?
Yeah,
Right,
I think
right
I
at
played
45.
42 today.
Yes, she played 42.
It was really fun.
Pre-war F5. Some of them were ferns.
Yep. And it
And
was still really fun.
there was a couple of guys that didn't display them, but we knew they were here. I won't call any names,
But
but
we're gonna go knock on that door in 20
some
minutes.
of them, some of them were well known, and they were walking around actually playing banjo. I saw him playing a banjo instead of playing his mandolin, but he had it here. And I've been to, there was a guy in Cincinnati who decided to have a Loarfest in his house. It became Loarfest Midwest in Cincinnati. We had about 20 guys that went to his house. His wife put on a dinner for us. We all slept bunked up in bedrooms, and it was really a nice thing. And so you can have a Loarfest with 4 or more. And I've been to several in Charlotte with some of the guys who, a lot of the Loar owners don't want to be made public. They're afraid that they don't want people to know they have them. But as you get in the club, you can kind of learn to know these people and respect their privacy. I personally have been in several homes of Loar collectors with the understanding I would not disclose their names, but I got to play their Loars. Most fascinating Loarfest I went to was in the vault at the Country Music Hall of Fame. Some guy donated, Georgia, I'll just say he was just a Georgia rich man that collected Gibson instruments, donated his collection of Gibson to the Country Music Hall of Fame. And Bluegrass Unlimited showed a picture of the director of the Country Music Hall of Fame sitting with all these F5s and L5s and K5s and sit in the center of them that this guy donated. I said, whoa. None of those have been documented for the F5 Journal. So I called up the director, told him who it was. He said, yes, we can get you in to see the Loars. They're in the vault. And when I got there, that guy wasn't there. And I told the secretary, I said, well, you know I'm supposed to look at the Loars. Oh, yes, he told us that. And she opened the vault, pushed me in, and locked the door behind me. And I had a ball. My older brother was with me, and we unloaded case after case. I photographed them, documented them, got the serial numbers, and boy, it was unbelievable. Wow. Ferns, Loars, K5s, L5s. And those are not on display at the Country Music Hall of Fame. They're just in the vault. So it's amazing what you can find when you hunt these things down. And it's part of the F5 Journal that Darrell started back in about 1986, I believe it was. He and I had both been working separately on a Loar list, and we got together in about 82 when I got my first Loar from David Bromberg. Everybody remember Dave? Mm-hmm. He was a big collector. And when it came to me in the mail, UPS, what it was, I opened the case, the smell. That was it, the smell. You open the case, and there it is. And
Loar smell.
I called Darrell Wolf, and I said, hey, I know you got a Loar. I just let you know I've got one. And then we became friends, and I was able to go to a lot of people's houses and get serial numbers and documentation on the various Loars for about a 10-year period. All over the Southeast, Midwest, I'd knock on people's doors, and they let me in to see their Loars. And most of them were gracious to see me, and as we sit down and pick just like we are today, and you become part of the club. And you mentioned about the car clubs. You have these collector car clubs, Corvette clubs, meet up in Gatlinburg once a year. You have the Pigeon Forge up here in Tennessee, that Rod Run, I think they call it, that gets together collector cars. So it's a unique club of mandolin players who happen to own Lloyd Loars. And of course, you get to play one of the premier.
I'm loving
yes,
playing
you
on
get
that
to play.
Do you like the mandolin?
And now you get to play all these other related mandolins that are.
It's been an amazing experience.
Yeah. So we talk about Lloyd Loar a lot. There's a lot to be known about Lloyd Loar. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors. He wasn't that great of a mandolin player. He was like a lot of them, he could read the music, but he wasn't an improviser. some of the other mandolin players in his Gibsonian mandolin group were better pickers than he was. So he was just acoustic engineer that Gibson hired, and he was good enough to go on the road to promote the Gibson F5 with the Gibsonian band. There was about 5 people in the band, maybe 6, plus a girl singer that he ended up marrying, Fisher Ship. So Loar was a man of the town at Gibson between 1922 and 1924, when he made an abrupt exit after the Christmas party. We don't know the rumors of what happened at that Christmas party, but it was enough to say, we don't need Lloyd Loar anymore. And he exited the door with the stickers that has his signature on it.
That's why there's a few unsigned ones running around.
That's right. Well, he wasn't there to sign them either. So.
Yeah.
And they just felt like they'd gone through the period of acoustical engineer, which is be an expensive employee. It's an engineering degree. I'm an engineer myself, so I know it pays more than not like doctors and lawyers, but you know.
Does it pay more than being a mandolin player?
Well, which mandolin player are we talking about?
Okay.
Sierra Hull or Sam Bush?
I don't think we were talking about that.
Yeah. So you have to kind of learn what mandolin players are all about, but it's all because Bill Monroe chose the Lloyd Loar F5 as his #1 mandolin. Bill ended up owning 2 of them, so he had a fondness for it. We're happy to be here today to celebrate the gathering of the Loars, we call it, and everybody here that displayed them has a story to tell, just like I do, of how we acquired them, which ways we acquired them. I know you have a great story. You want to tell your story
Sure,
about this mandolin, which that was one of the ones I documented on my journeys to go to Joyce Adams' house. Told her who I was, and I said, I've got a mandolin like yours. I'd like for us to get together and play some songs and compare mandolins. She said, come on. And she was a gracious host when I went to see her and play her mandolin. And sweet lady. And then you ended up, tell them how you ended up with a very famous mandolin.
Well, Joyce was an acquaintance of mine for many years, and had the opportunity to get it from her. I was interested in it for 25 years, I guess, and knew about the mandolin, but finally had the opportunity to acquire it, and it's a real treat to have it.
Now, who was the original owner from Joyce? That was Conrad?
Conrad Getz, I believe, was his name. And he was the guy who started the Baltimore Mandolin Orchestra. So
she played for him, and that's how she ended up with it.
Right. So she was a member of the Baltimore Mandolin Orchestra too, and concert mistress. And so I guess really this mandolin lived in Baltimore for about 98 years of its life. And I'm sure it was played a lot because mandolin orchestras tend to rehearse weekly and play concerts. So,
but they weren't rough on it like bluegrass pickers. They used light strings and very thin picks.
Exactly.
And they played it very lightly. So
this one went to Baltimore for a couple of years after Eli Karasik passed away, and was hanging out there. But they weren't really using it, so it got sent back to Denver for me to hang out with it, which I'm very grateful for.
Now, how did it end up in Colorado?
Eli had it. Eli Karasik was a mandolin player who's originally from New York.
Okay.
And he did the military thing. He bought it in 36, or his father bought it for him in 36, from what I understand. And then after that, he ended up teaching at a school in Climax, Colorado, which is a ghost town now. It was a molybdenum mine. And then after that, he moved to Denver. And then he founded the Denver Mandolin Orchestra. And then it was there in Denver from whenever he moved to Denver until he passed away in 2015. Mm-hmm. And then his kids got the mandolin.
And now you got it.
Well, they've entrusted it to me. It's
yes.
still their mandolin.
Yeah, but they're not mandolin players. No,
they're a piano player and a bass player, but they are phenomenal musicians.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
You mentioned Bill Monroe's music. Should we play a Bill Monroe song?
Let's do
That sounds cool.
song. Monroe had his first mandolin instrument was Tennessee blues, not to be confused with the J.D. Crowe song, Tennessee blues. And then his second was Bluegrass Special, and then his third big one, well, he had a couple that he didn't write in there. And then he wrote the Bluegrass Stomp. And it's just a gentle 3-chord mandolin tune that's got a little swing to it. Put the blues in it. He liked to put the blues in the notes. And not many people play it these days. You don't see, when I do a show, they feature me on the Bluegrass Stomp. And the audience loves to hear that song. It's very similar. Earl took the same tune and put it in the key of G versus D, and it's the same tune. So banjo players I play with capo up and play it like Earl Scruggs' Bluegrass Special, or Foggy Mountain Special. And the Bluegrass Special Monroe wrote when Earl was in the band, it was played in the key of A. And then the Bluegrass Stomp came when Mac Wiseman was in the band in 49. And it was played in the key of D. So we'll start that out. Now who's going to start it?
I think you're going to start it. We're going to go this way, and then we're going to go together.